Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Eric Murphy.
And I'm Thomas Westbrook.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we need to talk.
Hey man, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Dude, I'm so glad that you're on. For people who don't know who you are, actually, would you like to introduce yourself or would you like the introduction?
I want to hear it.
Okay. So, Thomas Westbrook, on a personal note, is a dear friend who just had his birthday. Happy birthday. We had a good time doing birthday celebratory stuff yesterday. But on a professional note, Thomas Westbrook has a YouTube channel called Holy Koolaid. Holy Koolaid goes over debunking psychics and mediums. It's a science education, and it's also a biblical history channel. He has really well-viewed playlists that debunk psychics, and also your Nothing Fails Like Bible History series is really popular. And also, I've been doing video editing for you for over a year now, and I've been getting the chance to get in and do that kind of studying and stuff with you. We've traveled, we've done a lot together, so it's good to have you on, man. What do you think? Anything I miss? Your speaker, debater?
No, I mean, I wouldn't call myself a debater. I've done one live debate.
That means you're a debater.
I'm not a master debater yet.
No.
But I try to focus most of my energy on everything from the paranormal to, pseudoscience. And I want people to learn how to think critically, how to apply skepticism towards their lives. And I try to focus on different topics each week, like a wide variety of topics. I want people to learn the tool set that they can use to figure out how we know what we know.
Yeah, and I love it. I love it. I'm really glad that you're here. V is well. V is just taking a personal day. They're actually in the other room, chillaxing. V, I love you, and I'm glad you're getting the chance to relax. I know that one of these days I'm going to do that too. So I'm really glad that you're filling in. Let's see. Do we have any major announcements? We do have a couple, but I'm going to plug them throughout the show. We've got so many awesome callers. I'm really excited to dive in.
Nice.
Have you gotten to look at the call queue? Is there anyone in particular that you want to talk to?
I know that Javier called in first, and I'm really curious about his take on the rights and stuff.
Definitely. In the notes, it says they want to talk about positive and negative rights and why they think that negative rights are most justified. That is curious. Javier in Florida, you're live with Eric and Thomas.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, doing well. Thank you for calling in. So you want to talk about rights?
Yes, I do, and maybe left if we get to it.
Okay. So why? Just so people are clear, Javier is theist. So has a different viewpoint than us, and I would love to kind of hear how you consider rights and why is it important, and why are some justified and others less justified.
Yeah, sure. So sort of in the vein of last Sunday's call, just I guess to bring people who may not have heard it up to speed, my position on rights in general is that as a matter of just practical necessity and reality, you only really have them if they are defended either by yourself or by someone else or some sort of governing body or document. Of course, I don't mean to imply, and I did notice in the comments for my call last week, there was a bit of confusion. I don't mean to imply that when I say rights, that I'm referring only to those enshrined in government. For example, I think your right to self-defense is ultimately something that's up to you and you have to defend. But more to the point, I think that a right, if we're considering in the frame of government, that a negative right, as I understand it, is the one that is most justified in being granted as opposed to a positive right. And is it safe to presume that both of you are familiar with these two terms?
I think so, but why don't I kind of give a definition for the audience and let me know if we're on the same page. How's that sound?
Okay.
So when I think of positive and negative rights, I think of rights that are either actively granted or actively restricted. Would you say that's similar to your perception?
Could you elaborate what you mean by actively restricted, please?
So like a positive right would be like a right that's given to you, like you have the right to do this, you have the right to do that, whereas like a negative right would be like you don't have the right to do this. And so it might be a right for you because it's like other people don't have the right to hit you in the face.
Yeah, that's in the vein of what I mean. I probably should have given my working definition first.
Let's have you define it so that we can make sure we're talking about the same thing.
Okay, so by my understanding, a negative right is one that is phrased and or enforced in terms of preventing someone or something from doing something to you. As an example, the way that I used this example last week too. I think it's the Fourth Amendment, the one for illegal search and seizure. It's in terms of the government and or it's the police acting for the government are not allowed to engage in an illegal act of search or seizure. It's not like a positive right. Like I know in the United States we don't have this, but in a country where there may be universal health care, the right is that you will be provided with health care.
Okay.
Versus a negative right being you will not be stopped from doing other things, like you will not be arrested for saying that your favorite color is periwinkle or that you like chocolate chip ice cream.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So why do you think one is more or less justified, and why is that important?
I think that positive rights are less so justified because in saying that you are entitled to receive something, what that also implies is that you are entitled to the fruits of someone else's labor, because goods and services they don't come out of nowhere. They come out of someone else's labor. And although my position is that you should willingly help people out, to try to put forth the idea that someone is actively entitled to the fruits of someone else's labor, I think is not morally justified.
Well, yes, and I think that if you put it that way, you're eliminating the social contract that we take part in. I think that we are all willingly and some of us unwillingly a part of a social contract. And that social contract we've built out, right? We have a government, we have a system, and because you are actively a part of that system, you reap the benefits of it. So every time you drive on a road, technically you are benefiting from the fruits of someone else's labor. But there's also a bottom floor to it. What does it mean to be free? If you are in absolute poverty, if you are destitute, are you free? Right? I think that when a society gets together, when we do create a social contract, you give, but you also get. And I think that so long as you are giving and are a contributing member of society, that society should strive to give you the opportunity to pursue those things that we think of when we talk about freedom. What do you think?
Could you elaborate on what you mean by contributing member of society?
Sure. Do you have the choice about whether or not you pay sales tax?
No.
What about?
Or rather, I could try to short the cashier, but they're not going to give me to it.
Right. It's just the number, right? What about following the laws? I think that when you're acting in the set structure of the society that you're in, you're giving things up, right? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Why? Because you'll cause panic. You're acting in the structure of a society that, you're losing that. But what are you gaining in return, right? You live in a society where there are public roads, where there is enforcement of laws, where there are fire departments, where there's, public education, those kinds of things. That's what you get in return. So when you put it the first way that you did, it sounds like, if we lived in a society where there was no governance, no social contract that was being upheld, I think things would be different. It wouldn't be gone entirely, but it would be different. But I think in the context of the world that we live in, I don't know. It feels like it almost becomes disingenuous. You have to put that context in, otherwise it starts to get funky. My example of driving on a road being benefiting from the fruits of someone else's labor as an example.
Well, I think that in the context that we have, in the context of where we already have infrastructure and are participating in that infrastructure, like you said, it's not like we really have a choice in that scenario. And and I am a proponent of dealing with reality on its own terms, in terms of what is. Mm-hmm. But my position is not so much in terms of what is, but what I think is morally justified and morally not justified.
Fair. I think it's kind of case by case. It's very hard for me to imagine positive rights the way you defined them. I don't really use the word entitlements, but I could see why you would. I can definitely imagine scenarios that would justify it. Because of that, I think that I would feel hesitant to make a broad strokes, claim about it. If that do you get what I mean? Could you come up with examples where those are justified?
Where the positive rights are justified?
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, a positive right would be justified if it's something that you have actively contributed toward. Like you said, if you're a contributing member of society and you've entered into a willing agreement, I would say that there it's justified.
Okay.
But in that context, I kind of when I'm using the word entitlement, it's sort of I don't want to I know the word has some baggage. I didn't mean to imply entitlement, like a spoiled child thinking that they're they just deserve things for no reason. I don't mean to do it like that.
Sure.
But I think that entitlement should come with some giving. For example, I think that you are entitled to receive the payment as part of a contract with your employer because you made an agreement, you do the work, and thus you are entitled to that.
Okay.
So,
what about public education?
Public education.
Yeah.
Whether people should be entitled to public education.
Yeah. Do are children willingly entering into a societal contract, and are they reaping benefits? They are reaping benefits. So why should we educate other people's children? Is there a moral justification there?
I would say that it's the parents that are entering them into that instead of the children themselves because of their status as legal minors. My opinions on the current public education system are, let's say, less than favorable at the moment. The idea of simply educating them, I would say that the parents are already paying for it with their taxes, so they're already entitled to that.
Can I offer an alternative scenario?
Sure.
What about someone with a severe disability who is unable to take care of themselves? They're unable to go to work. They're, stuck in a wheelchair and, have no ability to move whatsoever. They don't have any other family members who are there, who are alive, who are able to take care of them. Do they have a right to live? Do they have a right to be cared for?
By the state.
I think I don't. My position is not that rights are something that actively exists on its own. So I would say, just do they have that right in and of itself? No, but I think that they should be assisted by others. They should be helped so that they can have the best quality of life that they can.
Yeah, and I think I would. Just to rephrase what you're saying, to some extent, I agree where I don't think that rights are this inherent, tangible thing that all of us have. I think that we can build societies that allow or revoke certain rights, so to speak. But that's a scenario where you have someone who's unable to give back to society, who's unable to contribute to society. And, you could call them freeloaders. You could say that they're reaping the fruits of someone else's labor. And yet I think most of us who, have compassion and empathy will look at a scenario like that and say, hey, let's make a society where it helps everyone, because we never know when we could be in that scenario or that position, and maybe we haven't really contributed a whole lot to society yet, and yet we want to build a compassionate society where, are you familiar with John Rawls' Veil of Ignorance?
Yes, I am.
Just for the audience's sake, it assumes a world where if I'm going to build a society, I'm going to assume that I could be anyone in this society, and I don't know before I create the society what I'm going to be. So I'm behind a veil of ignorance. I could be, black, white, male, female, gay, straight,
pauper, or king.
And what kind of world would I want to create where just rolling the dice, I could end anywhere, it's going to be the best possible world? And when you undertake this thought experiment and you realize, hey, the world that we currently live in, it doesn't favor people who are unlucky enough to get a particular draw. So let's make the world better so that they have a shot too. And so if I don't know, maybe I'm going to get hit by a car tomorrow and, end up completely paralyzed, I want to make a society that looks out for people in that type of situation. And I don't think that that's immoral and that that's, just reaping the fruits of someone else's labor. I think that we all pay into society because we all want to create a society that has that kind of compassion, because we know that that could be us. And even if it's not, we have empathy for others.
So I think that's an interesting example you brought up there, because I personally, for someone who is unable as opposed to unwilling, I do think that those who are unable should be taken care of, whether it's because they've reached an advanced age or they've suffered some serious injury or have some other condition that prevents them from being able to actively contribute. Just from a position of compassion, I do think that it's better to help them have that greatest quality of life that they can. But it's because it's not like they have failed at anything, like they're literally unable to do it, rather than just choosing not to do it. So I wouldn't call them freeloaders.
Well, it's interesting. I wish that we had more time to talk about it, but I do want to give just a little bit more time to this. Javier, I kind of want to ask, we're talking about a moral justification for a positive right now, correct? Right? Like taking care of the elderly, taking care of the infirm. I entirely lost what I was going to say.
Can I add something while you think about that?
No, you please do, because this is what happens when you do a live show.
It's very difficult when you start doing this. To a large extent, Javier, I think I relate to your concern. I very much relate to your concern, where we don't want a society where everyone is just freeloading, where everyone is just taking from others and not contributing. That's not sustainable from a business standpoint, from an economic standpoint. It's not sustainable. I get it. At the same time, who determines who is freeloading and who deserves and who doesn't deserve rights? It becomes a lot trickier the more you dive in and look at nuances. And a great example of this is if you have mental health issues where you struggle with depression or you struggle with anxiety, and it's something that's not easily visible to people from the outside, and yet you can be crippled. You can have crippling anxiety or depression to the point where it's just you're not able to get out of bed in the morning because you have a chemical imbalance in your brain that you have no control over. That's a genetic thing, and there could be nurture aspects and nature aspects, but sometimes you just need that bump, and you might be considered freeloading, getting medical help, but then that medical help is enough to bump you up to a point where now you're healthy and you're able to contribute and you're able to work and you're able to give back, but you weren't before when you got that help. And so it's this trade-off that we make, where when we help people with things like healthcare and when we help them get to that point where they're actually in a place where they can function, then I think most people, at least from my experience, most people want to be able to be creative and contribute and be a part of society and actually have something that they can take pride in. Not everyone, but I think most people, when they're healthy, that's what society gravitates towards and encourages.
And I remembered, and you got me there. Thank you. So part of what sounds like it was implied here is this idea that, you know, we should make sure that we encourage and reward success, and we punish failure. Should failure, right, in this case, a capitalistic failure, right, if you are not able to, you know, keep a job, should that punishment be the inability to get medication, or the inability to be safe, right? Maybe, you know, being unhoused, or, you know, things like that. Like, I do think that at a certain point, it's not about, you know, freeloading. I think at a certain point, there are basic human rights that we should be affording everyone, right? And I do think that safety and security should never be something that you lose because you didn't succeed in the business world, you know? Because we've talked about all of these different examples of, you know, people who are unable to work, people who are, you know, really, really old and retired, or whatever the case is. I think that we should have, and this is just my take, but I think that we should have a bottom floor, you know, a floor level. And that floor level should make sure that no one is unsafe. You know, that should not be a punishment for, you know, failure. Or the inability to do that. I think that, you know, I wish that we'd lived in a country. You're in Florida, you're in the same country as me. I wish we lived in a country that had a universal health care. Not because I think that, not because I think that, I think we should have universal health care, because I think that that should be part of what is just part of basic decency, you know? People's well-being shouldn't be part of that math, don't you think? Like what are other things that people can have, right, as a benefit of success, right? You succeed in the business world, you or whatever the case is, right? You can have all of these nice things, but if you don't make someone's safety, well-being, or ability to live, you know, for an extended time, right? Don't put that in the equation.
Well, and if you look at most entrepreneurial endeavors, and first of all, I don't think that someone's inherent self-worth, you know, that their worth is simply determined by how productive they are. And I think that just looking at someone as, oh, they were super productive, they were, you know, they made billions of dollars and made this huge company, so this person's life has worth, but the person who did less, you know, is worth less. Like, I'm not sure that I want to go there, but let's say that you do tie someone's worth to productivity, and you have 10 entrepreneurs, and they all come up with 10 great, creative, brilliant ideas, and maybe they even create some gadget that works, and yet 9 of them, you know, statistically speaking, 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs are going to fail. And so 9 of them completely flop and, you know, file for, you know, bankruptcy, and 1 of them becomes a billionaire. From an economic standpoint, you know, that's just the way that it works. You have some that succeed and some that don't, and some just didn't time the market right, and some got unlucky, and some knew a lot about inventing but not a lot about business management. And, you know, there's different reasons why stuff succeeds and fails. But for those 9 who didn't succeed, are we just going to say, well, those 9 now, they should just starve to death, or they shouldn't be able to have, you know, dental care, and their teeth should rot and, you know, get infected? And we don't treat society like that in other ways. We don't say, hey, your house is on fire, we're not going to put out the fire because, you know, you haven't paid your taxes in the last 2 years because you're bankrupt. No, we help them because we understand that if we don't put out that fire, it'll spread to the other houses. And it's the same type of concept in society, where, like, if we don't take care of society, if we don't say, hey, you know, if we don't help these people who are impoverished and, need a kidney transplant or need insulin or something, if we don't help them, then society starts to crumble. You start having people, they go deeper and deeper into debt. The debt carries over. The entire communities are held down that way. You have massive medical debt. That
Sure.
it's just, and then that leads to increased crime rates because they're desperate. And then you have this pipeline straight to prison where, our prison systems hold more people in America than anywhere else. There's so many factors to it that affect it. And I think if we just treat people with compassion and have, like you say, kind of a bottom floor that is like, when you fall and you crash, like there's enough of a safety net to help you get back up on your feet and take care of your basic needs, your health and your life and stuff. Yeah. It's ridiculous to me that, and I know I'm covering a million different things, but...
Well, let me wrap it back around together, because really what it sounds like we came away with was to talk about whether or not capitalism equals morality. The idea of benefiting off of somebody else's labor. I don't think that those are tied together. I think that there are instances where you could feasibly do it, but I think viewing it that way is dystopian. But
okay, yeah, there was a lot of stuff there.
There was. You should have the opportunity to respond, and then we'll probably move on to the next caller.
Yeah, to not drag this out any longer, I'll just say that I do not believe in necessarily punishing failure. I did not indicate that, nor did I mean to imply that. And I am not objecting to an idea of a safety net. I mean, like, for example, I think it's ridiculous that a ride in an ambulance costs as much as it does, and I do not necessarily object to the idea of, for example, having a universal, at least for like sudden injuries or stuff like that, having some sort of base health care that everyone can have access to. I think, if you break your leg in an accident and then you can't work and you lose your job and so on and so forth, I don't think that's good. So I wouldn't object to having some sort of basic health care for something like that. And also, it's not that I'm like set in my ways. I am at the moment, I'm like, I'm thinking about all this stuff, and evaluating whether, what I ultimately agree with more.
Javier, that's why we like you as a caller. You're honestly, openly questioning and wanting to talk about things and changing your mind about things. That is exactly what we want.
Thank you, I guess. But yeah, just to finish up, regardless of, because I do I do believe that the ultimate measure of what you deserve is if you are able to work. And by work, I don't necessarily mean any one kind of work, because you can work with just about anything. But I do think that in terms of people deserving things, it should be things that they work for. And if they're unable to, however, then they should be supported by a safety net. Well, I don't object to safety nets, but with all of that, even without a sort of like government safety net, I do think that the ultimate safety net is the kind of compassion and care that people have for each other. Whether 2 weeks from now I'm still a theist or an atheist or a Norse neo-pagan or whatever, I will still hold the belief that man should be kind and compassionate and caring for his or her fellow man.
Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. This has been a fun excuse to talk about rights, though. And I'm really glad that you're thinking about it. Hopefully, what we've contributed lends more information or gives a different viewpoint that can help. Maybe it's all stuff that you've already heard, but we're glad you called in.
I'm glad to be here. Have yourselves a nice rest of the day.
You too.
Bye.
Take care. I'm really proud of the callers that we get on this show.
Yeah, it was a good call.
Yeah. Okay. We have a good number of theist callers. I want some navel gazing. We have Giovanni in Virginia wants to talk about whether or not time can actually exist without existence itself. And it looks like Giovanni is saying that time existed before the Big Bang. Giovanni, you're live with Eric and Thomas.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hi.
How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Happy that you called in. So you want to talk about whether or not time can exist, with or without existence. First off, I kind of want to lay the groundwork. Why is this an important thing to talk about? Why is this valuable or interesting?
Well, I just think it's because of how debatable it is and how there's really not a concrete answer. I mean, I just want to start off with your guys' perception of time.
Sure.
Like, what do you consider time to start at?
Well, before we dive in, I do kind of just want to connect this a little bit more. Giovanni, are you a believer? Are you a religious person? Does that influence your worldview?
No, I have to base it off the facts.
Okay, so
I can't just.
No worries. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just reaching back to when I was a believer, and I thought that before the universe came into being, however it came into being, if it came into being, that there was a God that was just kind of hanging out in a dark room, standing upon the surface of the waters and created everything. And in other calls in the past, people who wanted to talk about this, I've often taken the stance that without time there is no causation, and so if time stopped, or if there was not time before the Big Bang, if that was the case, then it would be impossible for anything, including a God, to have causally done something. You know what I mean? Like
so basically, time is a series of cause and effect.
Yeah, and without time, you could not cause a thing to come into existence, and so that was one of the places that I butted up against whether or not a God existed. So it sounds like you're saying that time can exist when nothing else can. Why?
Because I believe time doesn't deal with the abstract of the foundation we were built in. I feel like it deals with how we. I don't really think time exists in a literal sense. I feel like it's a thing that we made up.
I disagree. There was a time when I agreed with you, but I mean, here's the thing. Time is relative, that is absolutely understood, but the way that we interact with it is reliable enough. We can talk about time's impact on energy and on matter, and because of that, I think that time is something that exists intrinsically, maybe not as a physical ontological object, but
Giovanni,
it is maybe a property.
Giovanni, do you believe in the existence of space-time? And that space-time is an aspect of our universe that can be warped, that we travel through?
I don't think it can be warped. I don't think it can be warped I feel like we're talking about two different perceptions of time, basically.
Okay.
Well, because and maybe I should refine this a little bit, but when you look at special relativity and you look at how time, when in the presence of massive amounts of gravity, that time itself moves slower, and you see how large gravitational objects can warp space itself. It can warp light around objects. And also it can adjust time. And when you move quicker through space, you move slower through time. Like these are all things that have been tested and that have been verified. And so to me, when I hear about time as just something that we make up, it's like, well, it's something that we define based off of our perception and our experience, but it's definitely something. It's something that we not only experience, but that we're able to measure and that we're able to calculate and stuff.
Ooh, what if we say that we interact with time as a tool? Would that work?
I would say you'd have to have a physical reading for time itself. You can't give me a physical diagram. You can only tell me what it is. That's the thing.
Well, but as a tool, maybe we can interact with it, like in the same way that we interact with math, right? Does math exist ontologically, right? Is there a place where you can take me to the number one? No. It exists as an adjective. right? I can look at Thomas, and one of the qualities of Thomas is that there's one of him. In the same way that he's wearing a blue shirt, there's one Thomas next to me. And we could maybe interact with time that way.
Yes, but I can do that by giving you a ruler and showing you the measurements.
Okay. So
that's physical thing.
Okay.
That is a physical thing. I don't believe that you can give. I don't believe you can give me that for time.
Well, when you say physical, do you mean material? Like, do you mean that it has
something I can hold? Yes, something I can hold in my hand. Yes.
So I mean, are there things though in the universe like radiation or light, like photons, that you can't hold? They don't have mass, and yet they can still have physical existence, like they exist in natural reality.
But I believe there's science. Because there's science, we know it exists. We have scientific readings that it's actually there. We can actually test it.
Yes.
I don't believe it's
Well,
necessary.
Let me wrap this back into the call. So why do you think that time can exist without a universe, or maybe we didn't get the call notes correctly? Like, what is your thesis here?
Because it has an abstract how it goes. Like you cannot tell me that time just wasn't there before time started. Like it had to have a viewpoint where it came infinite. Like it came very infinitely in the universe, just like the universe. Like where does the universe end? It doesn't end. What's at the end of the universe? There's nothing. It keeps going. Like how is that possible?
Well, so I kind of want to push back and challenge you here, because there are a lot of times that what we take for granted, some of these V knows the word, and I never heuristics. Heuristics, right? It sounds like you're using heuristics that you use throughout the rest of your life, and that's understandable. But I want to challenge whether or not that's appropriate, because we're evolved apes. We're not able to conceive of large numbers. That doesn't mean that large numbers can't exist. It just means that over a certain, amount, we're just not able to really conceive of it. And so when you say, I can't conceive of it, what that is that's actually an informal fallacy. It is appealing to, I don't know, therefore. So it's an appeal to ignorance. And I'm not trying to say that in an offensive way. I'm just want to help you here that should not be a good tool to use to figure out whether or not something is real.
Can I give you an example that
hold on. Can Giovanni respond to that first? Giovanni?
Yeah, I don't really have an assumption for what I believe about the universe. I'm not making assumptions. I'm just saying, I'm acknowledging that it's pretty weird how it exists,
Okay, Thomas, go ahead.
So there's one thing when visualizing dimensions, for example, it's really, really hard to visualize what it would be like to be in 4 dimensions. And yet when physicists, or 5 dimensions or 10 dimensions, and yet when physicists make theories that work, that match all of our observations about the universe, a lot of times mathematically there are more dimensions, especially with string theory. There's up to like 10 different dimensions that are, all folded in on each other. But let's run with that as an example. You say that where is the end of the universe? Could there possibly be anything outside of it? Does it just go on infinitely and we just can only see to a certain point and can never travel to the end of it? Well, think of like a piece of paper. Let's say that you have a piece of paper in front of you and it is an infinitely big piece of paper. And this piece of paper, it's just 2-dimensional. It's a flat plane, and you're standing outside of that piece of paper, but the edges of the paper go on for eternity. You could still be, because you're in 3 dimensions and it's in 2, you're operating in a space where you can step outside of that paper and see it and be outside of it, even though it's infinite in a 2D spatial dimension. And so when you talk about time existing before the universe, but then at the same time saying, talking about like the universe, there's nothing kind of bigger outside the universe. I'm like, well, there could be something outside the universe, and there could be time before the Big Bang. Right now, our most of our physical formulas show that as matter becomes infinitely dense, and our observations of the earliest moments in time based off of the cosmic microwave background radiation show that at one point the universe was much smaller and got denser and denser. And with our current understanding of physics, as it becomes infinitely dense, time becomes infinitely slow. And so it's like time kind of starts to lose its meaning. It's like we don't even know what to do with that. That's an area where physics is kind of hitting a brick wall. And so it's like, was there time before time was infinitely slow? It seems to not make sense, but maybe there's another type of time, maybe outside of our universe. Maybe we're in a simulation, so time's moving at one speed for us, and for our simulators, it's moving at a different speed because they have different laws of physics. Maybe within our universe, we have our time because we have our space-time, but then outside of our universe in some other dimension, there's another type of time that's different from ours, and they can see all points in time. Like, I don't know, but there's no way to test it.
But the answer is I don't know.
Conceptually, it's like, it's maybe, but we have absolutely no way of knowing.
And relying on incredulity is not going to get us anywhere. It's not going to help us, come up with possible solutions that we can test for. I'll give you an example. So I don't want to, say this wrong. It sounds like you were saying that you can't conceive of time starting, right? Like you can't conceive of there not being a before.
Yes.
Okay.
Like if my microwave beeps at me, and there's nothing in it. How did that happen?
I don't understand that example, but can I give an example in return?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe you could have time to think about it. Yeah, sure.
So you believe that a God exists, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did that God create the universe? Do you believe in that kind of God?
Yes. I believe he's part of the universe. He's actually the universe.
Okay. Who created that God, or how did that God get created?
God is he's always existed.
I'm sorry?
He's always existed. He's always been there.
But it sounds like you're saying you can't conceive of a beginning. So you're interesting. No, that is consistent. Give me just a second. So you're saying that time has always existed and a God has always existed. So there's no beginning to a God.
Oh, there's a beginning. It's very supernatural. It's very complex. There's a lot at play there. We don't understand everything, but
it's just interesting because I feel like if we explored it, there would be some inconsistencies that I would want to pick at. I'm just the kind of person that picks at the sweater, and and I will, if I find if I find a loose thread, I will pull it until I undo the entire sweater. That is just the nature of Eric. Giovanni, have you called before? You have a very familiar
Have I called before? Not Eric.
No? Okay.
Do you what's going on?
You sound that there's a something prickling at the back of my mind that makes you just sound familiar. But either way, some
people just sound familiar.
Yeah,
some people just sound familiar. I mean,
that's just fine. I don't know where else we can go with this, but Giovanni or Thomas, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Well, yeah, I mean, I would just...
All right, go ahead, yeah.
No, Daddy, are you a faggot boy? He's not a faggot boy. You ain't a faggot boy. Are you a faggot boy? Are you a faggot boy?
Okay, I put him on mute. I don't want to get rid of him just yet. The question is, why?
Because he's a very small and insecure person who...
Well, here's the thing. I don't need to make assumptions about that. I'm unmuting you. Giovanni, are you there? I don't understand. It's like somebody who wants to have a useful call, but then wants to be a troll. And I don't understand it. Like, there can be use, right? There's use to the conversation about time. But why make a fool out of yourself?
Yeah, and the thing with those kind of callers is they're not making a fool out of show hosts. They're just looking childish.
Yeah.
And I think it's in this type of case, I think it's just deep insecurities.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad.
Yeah. Hey, Giovanni.
God, Lord.
We're disappointed.
Are you mad because I believe in a Lord? Are you mad because I believe in a Lord, a Jesus?
No.
A Jesus that made us all?
No, but
not
you're
at
not
all.
representing your faith very well, dude.
No, and you're not representing your point. You should strive to do better.
And-
We want you to do better, and being a troll doesn't do better, man.
If anything,
I don't know what you're talking. What's
you're
the
pushing
trolling?
people-
What's the trolling? What's the trolling? What's the trolling?
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna.
I was calling to have a useful conversation. I love you.
No. Oh my God. It's such a bad representation for his faith. Like, it's such
really
a bad
is.
representation, and it's so sad because it's like, if let's say that Christianity was true, I don't think there's evidence for it. In fact, I think there's a lot of evidence against it, and I want to go where the evidence leads. But it's like, between us and him, who's being a better representation or a better representative for their belief system? It's not the guy that calls in and starts, throwing slurs and like whining and being a troll. That's just immature. It pushes people away, if anything. It's like, dude, be better, do better. You really want to change people's minds? You really want to convince people that you're representing sanity and you're representing a good position that is solid and based, and instead you're spewing this garbage?
And also,
Come on, it's like, grow up. You're hurting your own goal.
yeah, and is the goal, what is it? I mean, we want to see well-reasoned conversations. There is this stereotype of the angry atheist who blows up and yells and just is unwilling or unable to listen, and we're doing our best not to be that. We're trying to present the best versions of ourselves, and we hope and charitably assume that that's the case with the people who call in.
Well, I feel like you gave him a shot. There was a point where, like, I would have just dropped the call when he started, throwing out slurs, but you gave him a chance to think about what he was doing and change his tune and talk in a productive way. And if anything, that's in stark contrast to this notion of the angry atheist.
Yeah.
But then, like, for me, I'm like, oh, there are Christians who I've interacted with. There are Christians who I know who are, have intelligent conversations and they care about the truth and they want to engage. And it's like, dude, I am appealing to you as a person, not as an angry atheist who's even remotely fazed by what you do. Because, man, I have seen this stuff. I have engaged with this stuff for way longer than you've been calling into shows. It does not faze me in the slightest, but I'm getting worked up because I'm like, man, you can do better. You can be better.
People in the chat are
And you're
saying
acting like a
that was
child. It's it's frustrating because I feel like any religion deserves to be thought through and worked through and examined and explored with integrity. And it's like, if it's true, I want to know, and I want someone to present it in a way that's actually, productive.
Yeah.
And instead we get this, and it's really
here's
sad that you're doing a disservice to your faith.
Yeah.
Shame on you.
That said, I am glad that we have the format that we do, because I think that we engaged honestly, and I think that people walked away with something from that conversation. So whether that person is going to grow or not, it really doesn't matter. I still say use to the call.
No, but I think people watching and listening who might be trolls maybe can take something from this and be like, oh, crap, I'm.
Yeah, we're just looking at we're looking at you as you, and we want you to represent yourself the best way possible, and we're going to give you that opportunity. That said, we are going to talk to another person who is a believer, who has, I think, demonstrated the way that they behave very, very well. Relic is calling again from Texas, and they want to talk about Relic wants to talk about what he believes and why. And it says that Relic may better explain other arguments to know reasons for your belief. Maybe that just came out a little wrong. Relic, you're live with Eric and Thomas.
Hello, Eric. Hello, Thomas. Holy Koolaid. By the way, I'm a new subscriber. Congratulations on your new video.
Oh, thank
Hey.
Yeah, Eric got me in, and I like a lot of the theories about other possible creation stuff that you went through. It was really neat.
Thanks. And yeah, and with all of those, what he's talking about is just released a video on, like, if there was a creator that started all of it, why does it have to necessarily be divine? Why does it necessarily have these attributes we think of are gods? And those are just a few ideas, and I don't hold to any of them, but they're really fun thought experiments to kind of throw out and, like, get into this sci-fi type world.
Yeah. Right, and like I said, it was very, very neat. I didn't get to finish it, unfortunately.
No worries.
It's just been a very busy week for me, and also another apology to you, Eric. I have not gotten to check Cat Kerr out yet. I have not seen anything on him. So I'll get there. And it might actually start me drinking, but we'll get there.
Make sure it's on a day that you don't want to be upset, or make sure it's on a day that you're okay with being upset. Sorry, because it's frustrating. But you want to talk about what you believe and why. We've had other conversations.
Yes.
I'm really glad you want to talk about what you believe. So, what do you believe? First off, let's lay the groundwork.
Okay. Do you mind if I do a tiny bit of a preamble? I'm talking about, like, a sentence, pretty much.
I mean, so long as it's conducive to this format.
I believe it is.
Okay.
Starting this off, because I believe that this has been a misunderstanding of where I'm coming from, and I feel like because my actual God belief, my core belief is not out there, that it makes it appear as if I am just pulling facts out of air from my belief system, and therefore I don't think it makes me look as honest as I should. So I just want to go ahead and say, just keep doing what you're doing and keep me honest on this. If you feel like I'm being dishonest anyway, call it out, and I will do my best to correct.
Relic, you should probably be a little bit more charitable to yourself, because I have found that sometimes I'm talking out of my butt and I don't realize it. As long as you own up to it and go, oh crap, I should revise that, you're good. But we'll call you out.
Okay.
So go for it.
Okay. So my belief system. I've mentioned Freya before. I apologize to Holy Koolaid, who has no backstory to this, but Freya to me is not like a goddess I worship. She is a spirit. That is just how I got into my path of shamanism and druidry. It's not Christian based. It's not any of this. For my afterlife belief, it's a neutral afterlife. There is no heaven and there is no hell. It is sort of just the next plane or the next area of existence. Kind
of like Sheol in the Old Testament?
I'm not familiar. I've heard the term before. Being young Earth creationist, past young Earth creationist, I probably should know that, but I don't.
It's kind of like just an underworld.
Yeah, it's just where people go.
Sort of. Now, as for my God belief, the God I believe in is gender neutral, is not male or female. It is kind of a melding of the two opposites, or the two sides of the same coin, and that other spirits have referred to it, and the reason I believe that the spirit exists is because other spirits have referred to it as the Great Spirit. It's what they all sort of hold in reverence, and they all mention.
What other spirits?
I've had, so there's Freya. I've interacted with the what I believe to be a historical version of Diomedes. There is a couple of elemental spirits. Take your pick. I've had quite a bit of interaction.
I want to see how Thomas interacts with this.
What kind of interaction? You say you're having interactions with these spirits, and these spirits are referring to this great spirit. How are you interacting with these spirits?
I've interacted with them through journeys. I've interacted with them manifestations in my home, around me and my family, which we've all been able to see, so it's not one of us.
So,
full-on conversations.
Okay, so when you say journeys, so you go on journeys and you see them, like you go to a mountaintop. What do you mean?
In journeys, it depends. There are multiple layers of the spirit where people in the past have sort of tried to mark where they've been before, and you could try to follow those paths there. Through these journeys, I've been in mountains that were very cold, frosted, to the point where I could still feel it when I get out of the meditative state. I've also been in forests. I've been in deserts. Take your pick. Even past abandoned cities.
So, I want to ask, unless Thomas, do you have a
Well,
line
I
question
want to
here?
probe. I want to probe because here's. Let me ask: when you have these experiences, you hear audible voices, you see visible manifestations.
Audible and visual for me. For my wife, sometimes she gets mostly audible. So she'll hear someone and hear what they're saying at the exact same time that I am, and very rarely she gets the visual as well.
Okay, so you're hearing the same things that your wife is hearing.
Yeah, almost exactly at the same time.
Now, did these auditory interactions, did they start happening before or after you and your wife started believing in this stuff?
Actually, before. My first interaction, Eric knows this, but I'm going to go ahead and just reiterate it. Me and my wife... I'm sorry?
Oh, I said go ahead, and then I have a question after.
Of course. Where me and my wife were just going through some clothes and stuff because we were in the process of moving, and a knock on the bedroom door, and Freya walks in. Like a physical person, it looked like at the time. In which case, my wife started figuring out, I think someone broke in, and then there was the whole conversation of okay, what's going on? And eventually it broke down to who she is and why she's there. And at the end of the conversation, sort of just kind of, I don't know, the best way I can describe it, sort of faded out of existence or out of the room. I don't know the science behind it or how she did it, but she just sort of went away in front of both of us.
So you're standing in a room, this deity walks in through the front door, and
who I believe to be a deity, yes.
Okay, fair. Two questions. One, at the time, what did you believe? And two, well first, what did you believe at the time?
First of all, hard anti-theism. I know that's now, through a bit more research, I don't think that's a tenable position, but anti-theism at the time, I considered myself to think that theism in general and pretty much 90% of what I believe now to be utter bunk and actually harmful.
Okay. So, unless you want to probe more, I do have a question.
Go for it.
Okay. So I'm going to put your lower third back up. So Relic, could I talk to Freya? Could I have this experience, the same kind of experience as you?
I believe so.
Okay. How do I do that?
I don't believe there's. You can do this through the meditation. How could I put this? Do you know what a sitting in the power meditation is?
Why don't you send it?
I know that you have a little experience in this, but it's typically called a sitting in the power.
I've done guided meditations, but I never really pay attention. So I probably, but here's the thing. I want to replicate this, and I want to see if I have the same experience. If mail, I think, at contact skepticgeneration@gmail.com, I think, is the email.
Okay.
It's been a while. Send me the instructions. Okay. Send me the instructions.
Yeah.
I want to test this. If I test it and I do have the same experience as you, I will tell you, and I will say it on air. If I don't have a similar experience, would that shake your confidence in whether or not what you experienced happened like in the world?
Okay. Honestly, it is what two things. First of all, Eric, I can't guarantee that you're going to speak to Freya. I got to be upfront with that. I can't guarantee that you're going to have a direct communication with Freya herself.
Well,
Freya comes as she goes at will, but like speaking and like actually journeying, I believe you 100% can do it. And if you come back and you're like, I didn't have this experience, and you go into your links onto why you don't believe in this experience or why you don't believe in this experience, I'm definitely willing to hear you out and to re-examine my beliefs.
Well, and just the talking to spirits in general is something that I don't believe, and I want to test it.
Understood.
In fact, if it's something we can put out to the community, I would want people to test it, and I would want to find out whether or not it's a reliable thing. If we don't come to the same, if we don't have the same experience as you, that should be data that you take into account, because
of course
it's worth trying. So how about we do this as a challenge? You send us an email, let us know what to do. I will do it this week. V is actually in the live chat and posted a poll asking about whether or not we should live stream Eric doing this meditation. V, you're a butt. V, I love you, but you're a butt. Relic, how about we put a pin in this, test it, and then come back to it? Because I'm willing to test it. I want to know if you are willing to adjust your views depending on what data you receive.
Oh, of course. To mine, because I feel like we sort of got off topic, the God belief itself, do you want to tackle that, or you want to put a pin in that as well?
So we have we've got 5 callers on the line. I don't think we're going to get through all of them, but I feel like this has been productive.
Can I ask a quick question just out of curiosity?
Thomas is dying.
Anything.
When Freya appeared to you and your wife the first time, what did she say? Like, did she say why she was there, that she was Freya and you should believe in her, and like what all was going on?
When she first came through the door, it was more like a knock that got our attention, and then it became an entire conversation. First of all, what are you doing in my house? Her trying to calm us down. That entire shenanigans, and then eventually got down to here's who I am. The way she phrased it is, I am not Freya as Norse mythology depicted me, though I'd never been into Norse mythology up at that point or seen anything on it. She explained herself as the spirit that the Norse goddess Freya was based upon. And she went through an entire list, and she actually gave me the instructions on how to meditate, the sitting in the power and everything else, and through backlogging and like going and looking up to see what she said checked out, a lot of it did, including the fact that a sitting in the power meditation in fact existed in the first place. So
I mean, if I were to give my honest reaction, the fact that this person knocked on the door, that they walked in, that both you and your wife saw them, that they said all of this stuff about this thing and believed this. It sounds like you just got trolled by someone who thought that they were a god, and that someone walked in. Like the only thing, at the very end, you say that they faded out, and I'm very curious.
Like literally out of existence. I would have thought the exact same thing. I'm not even gonna lie to you, holy Koolaid, for like first thing that I did was get myself medically evaluated. Mm-hmm. I think I mentioned that in the past too. So the first thing I was like, okay, am I seeing things? My wife was like, no, you're not seeing that. I saw things too, but I went and got myself evaluated. And as far as I could tell, there's nothing that's going on with me that shouldn't be going on with me.
So both you and your wife were staring right at this person as they vanished into thin air.
Yep.
And
I promise I'm not trolling you.
So if both you and your wife were to like write down without consulting with each other, just, hey, can you write down exactly what happened with this situation? How did they, show up? How did they leave? without influencing the other person, because sometimes, you know, we have these experiences and we're both like really excited, and it's like, and I heard this and I saw this, and the other person's like, yeah, and then like we add to and build on each other's story. But if interviewed separately, then the stories don't converge. Like if interviewed separately, there's discrepancies. Have you ever done something like that before?
At the time, I'm not going to lie to you, I was so wigged out by the experience completely that I asked her what just happened and tried to have her explain it back to me first, and it was just confirming what I had already seen. But at the time, I wasn't really thinking clearly. I'll admit that, because it kind of caught me off guard.
Were either of you in the moment either sleep deprived, on any kind of substances, under a large amount of stress, drinking or doing drugs? Like, was, you know?
No, actually, up until very recently, I'm going to say like maybe 3 or 4 days ago, I had my first drink, because I used to be a young Earth creationist, right? Like, I was raised in young Earth creationism. It's most likely the reason I went straight into anti-theism, because of how angry I was. I did have that angry atheist phase. But up until that point, as sort of like, I never drank alcohol, I've never smoked, I've never done any sort of drug at all, mostly because it was a strict younger creationist household, so that was sort of just outlawed from the outright. And only until recently, me talking about this and the fact that I don't do this, I'm like, why not? I mean, if I'm out of it, then why not give it a shot? So,
I mean, we're just assholes on the internet. It's a pretty low bar.
Yeah, and the thing is, whenever I hear these kinds of stories,
don't sell yourself short.
It's always tricky to, after the fact, try to come up with like post hoc, you know, reasons, not rationalizations, but like explanations. And so, you know, obviously for me, I can't test something that happened to you in the past. I can offer different scenarios, and I know of dozens and dozens of different ways and explanations for it. In fact, I have a couple videos on my channel for things that people often mistake for ghosts. And I did 2 whole videos that have a long list, or spirits or demons. And it's not a comprehensive list. There's way more things that, you know, I could turn it into a series and keep coming up with more stuff people mistake for ghosts or demons or spirits. But the fact that have natural explanations, and I could go one by one down the list of this stuff. But the fact is, I wasn't there. I wasn't with you. I didn't experience it, and I can't, you know, test it. But what you can do going forward is find ways to test it by, you know, setting up video cameras, and even then you have to be aware of the technology, because sometimes, you know, the camera can detect random artifacts that are natural, you know, specks or dust or bugs or things that can blur and catch light and warp and get in and out of focus, and people think they're spirits. So be careful with that if you don't understand all the nuances of technology. But
sorry.
What I would say is, if there's ways you can have like a group setting, have everyone go into a room and have these kind of spiritual experiences. If anyone sees a physical figure walk in, don't corroborate with other people, because that can change the story, and it can also alter the memories of people.
Right.
Have them, after they have the experience, write it down on a piece of paper. Everyone write it down in separate rooms, and, you know, have the whole thing videoed, and then compare the stories. And don't just look for the confirmation. Don't just look for the things that already confirm what you already believe. See if there's things that can disprove it, because that's how science works, is like, how can we test and see if this is falsifiable? And if you don't set up ways to falsify it and test it, then you're not doing good science, and you're believing something that you already want to believe. Now, I'm not saying that you started believing in it because you wanted to. But what I'm saying is, like, that's what I would encourage, is to still hold on to that level of skepticism, even if, you know, right now you know, say that you have good reasons to believe this stuff.
Do you want the chance to respond, and then we'll probably move on to the next caller?
Sure. Holy Koolaid, I 100% where you're coming from on this. As for like cameras and stuff, one of my favorite channels is what was it? It's a Corridor Digital. They're like a VA. What was it?
Love those
a
guys.
special effects group.
Yeah.
and they go through a whole bunch of ghost videos and they show them like how it's clearly fake and all this stuff. I'm not really convinced by like all the major Hollywood inspired ghost effects that people are going for. But it's more, to me, I think they're more like just little mini ARGs, and that's probably what people are into. As for like myself, it's just no offense on this. As for cameras and all that, I'm not about to turn my entire life into a circus over this, because I do have like a day job and a life outside of this that like I'm definitely up to, like me and my wife meditating in separate rooms, or in the same room, and then having that small experiment between the two of us without us speaking to each other. But like as for like turning it into a sort of amusement park of like, let's get all these shamans and druids into a room and let's see what they do. I just don't think that.
In a way, you already are. In a way, you already are, because you've taken this belief system, and you say you don't want to turn your life into a circus by testing your beliefs, but it's like, aren't you doing that?
That's not what I said. I'm okay with testing my beliefs. I'm just not okay in like going like ham on it and making it a big crazy deal.
It's like putting.
But are you not making it a big crazy deal by believing in these spirits, that they appear to you and talk to you, and it's shaping your entire worldview, and it's affecting and altering the way that you approach life, and you're spending time and energy and potentially even money on it? Like, that seems to me like something that if you're going to spend a lifelong endeavor pursuing this stuff, but you're not willing to take the time to really put it through the rigor of rigorous testing, that to me seems like a much bigger investment.
Okay. Sorry, Eric. Am I okay to respond real quick?
I'm not going to leave you hanging, but then we got to go. Okay.
Okay. First of all, I think that's an extremely uncharitable view of what I'm doing. No offense, I don't think you're purposely being uncharitable. What you're asking me to do is, first of all, you're acting like someone with a God belief just fell out of the sky, and this is like some crazy thing that I'm going to latch onto no matter what, like I'm clutching my pearls here. And that's not really exactly what I'm doing, because I'm open to discussing my beliefs. I'm open to coming out and having a conversation about my beliefs. But I think that's completely unfair to turn that around and be like, well, this is just some crazy shit that you're choosing to believe. Now, you might not have meant it that way, but that's how you said it. Is that fair in that assessment?
I think that the way that I could have come off that way, and that's not my intention, and I apologize for that. What I'm trying to draw the distinction between is, you called testing and experimenting, and trying to falsify your own beliefs, this huge elaborate thing that's turning your life into a circus. And
no, I say that placing cameras around my house and lighting it all up and somehow eventually getting it to streaming it to the whole world and look at my life is turning my life into a circus.
Relic, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, like, if you have like a moment where you're like, hey, let's get together and have a meditation, or a seance, or however you channel the spirits, setting up ways to record that specific instance. I'm not saying
no big
turn your life
cam?
I'm not saying turn your life into the Truman Show. So and when I say that, in a way you already are, what all I'm saying is that the cost of any religion, and this is just obviously I can't speak to your specific instance. I don't know you. I don't know how you practice your belief. But from my experience, any religion that I've ever encountered has a tremendous cost of time and energy and resources, and oftentimes money.
Right.
And so if that's a lifelong thing, to me, the cost between spending some time to really rigorously test it and go to experts and talk, and it sounds like you already are to some extent. You said you went out and you got evaluated and stuff. So good job.
Right.
And if you're right and this stuff is true, then it's like, yeah, absolutely, you should not be afraid to test it, because the truth will withstand scrutiny. So I'm not trying to offend, and I apologize that I did.
So maybe you're thinking like hit record on your phone before you start meditating.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Is like, yeah.
Does that?
Okay, I'm down for that. And I'm sorry if I came off extremely heated. And I don't normally do that. I don't normally pop the handle like that, so I apologize heavily.
I sparked a nerve.
And actually, here's the thing. It's because we're excited. It's not because necessarily we're offended, but it's because we navel gaze for fun. That's what we do. We're really excited about esoteric shit. And when that happens, we get heated and all of that. But we are, of course, going to be charitable with you, just as you're being charitable with us. Relic, thank you for calling in.
No problem. You have a great day.
You too. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of, what is the celebrity? Bill Murray. There's a story about Bill Murray walking down the street and, seeing somebody eating food at, kind of outdoor seating at a restaurant, and just walks up to somebody's table and stole a fry off their plate and ate it and looked them right in the eyes and went, "No one is ever going to believe you." And just walking away. Just the way that you described that Freya thing, I can absolutely admit, no one is going to believe you. Just steal this French fry.
I have to say, if I was a magician, if I was like a David Blaine or a David Copperfield, I would pull that kind of stuff on people just as a troll. And it would probably turn into a religion. And
that's how Thomas started a cult.
The thing is, I know people who do that, who will just troll people with things and little tricks and stuff that, because they lack the perspective, they all of a sudden think that something supernatural happened, and the other person's just doing it for the lulz and getting just giggle fits out of the fact that they convinced this person that something supernatural just happened. And the reason that I push back so hard when I get these kind of calls is because I hear this stuff all the time, always with different perspectives, and they're mutually conflicting perspectives. I'll hear people talk about how Jesus walked into the room and talked to them and disappeared, and how, in this case it was Freya, and some people talk about...
But what gets me with Relic is Relic is so open to, let's try this, or I could be wrong, or whatever other explanations.
And that's fantastic. What I'm saying is that the reason that I push back so hard and say test it is because we could literally take Relic and any of hundreds of other people who I've talked to with conflicting beliefs and put them all in a room to talk about their supernatural experience or their paranormal experience. And I guarantee you that they would all be 100% convinced of what they saw and heard and experienced. And yet every single one of them would be they would have to come up with another explanation for the other person's. It's either you misinterpreted it, you're confused, you had a hallucination, you're demon possessed. They would all come up with reasons to explain it that fits with their worldview. And I'm just like, hey guys, there's a lot of explanations that we can have that are naturalistic, and all these supernatural ones that are happening that you believe sincerely, they all conflict with each other.
Yeah.
And so that's why I push back is because I think that if there was this, unless God is a total troll, unless God is literally just messing with everyone.
Which honestly
is possible.
Yeah, in the same way any of it's possible. But okay, wow, we don't have as much time, and I want to take more callers, but I know that we don't have you for super, super long, and that's killing me. So we have somebody who I asked to call in, who wants to talk about a specific religion. But oh gosh, the well-being and morality metrics. David and Mace, please call next week. I lost track of time, and that is my fault as a host, and I want to talk to you about these things. In the meantime, we're going to talk to Yosiah in Virginia. Yosiah wants to ask us that when we were deconverting, what were some of the strongest reasons that kept us from fully disconnecting from our religion. Is that about right, Yosiah? Or is there anything you want to add to that?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder on that. What did it for you, or what kept you in the church as you were deconverting?
So, are you talking to Yosiah or to me?
Either?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you... Go ahead, Thomas. Go ahead.
So for me, for the longest time, I didn't think that there was an alternative. I thought, God was real, God existed, and all this stuff. And so as I started finding things that kind of didn't fall in line completely with the Bible, I still wanted to be a part of the church community. I didn't want to be viewed differently as a non-believer. And I also had this negative stigma in my mind associated with atheists, because I had grown up hearing all these horrible things about atheists and how, God is your source of love and meaning and morality and stuff. And so I didn't want to lose those positive attributes that I thought were exclusive to Christianity. And I also didn't want to lose the church community and my closeness with my friends and coworkers and family. So that kept me in for a long time. So even when I found things that would conflict, I would change my belief a little bit. So I would continue to believe in God and Jesus and the Bible, but I stopped believing in hell and demons. And I was like, yeah, that stuff is, can't really mesh well with a all-loving God. Or I believed in evolution, and so I'm like, well, it must be an old Earth creationist position that's true. And so God created the world over time, and Genesis is kind of more of a metaphor. So I shifted out very slowly, but it was those factors that really kept me holding on to it. And there were even times when I kind of like left the faith and stopped going to church and was on the fence, and then came back to give it one more go to like really throw myself into it to try and see if like God would, reveal himself more and show me the truth. And what I found is that the more I looked, the more it crumbled and fell apart. And eventually I left.
What about you, Yosiah? And then I'll go.
For me, it initially started with hearing the counter arguments against God, the contradictions, the problem evil. It started with those easier, I guess, baseline arguments that made sense just by hearing them. But then it evolved into listening to more long-form debates about God, hearing other positions, and also just the fact that there's like a million gods throughout human history. It just seems very odd that this is the unique one above all other ones. When we prove that these other ones have less credibility, it made less sense for me to say, well, this one's the special one. So that off.
Yeah.
That was very contradictory. But the biggest thing for me was the idea of hell in heaven. Like, having an afterlife necessarily was the biggest thing for me for the longest time. Because for me, the fear of non-consciousness kept me driving into wanting an afterlife. Even if I wasn't going to get into heaven, I would say to myself, well, hell is better than nothing for me. And that's what kept me in for a long time, that I would justify the fear of nothing as being my baseline. So I was thinking, like, if I was an annihilationist, maybe I would still be one. But luckily I was just regular old Catholic. So
Fair enough.
Are you afraid of going to sleep at night?
No, and I feel like that's when I was younger, that fear of non-consciousness was my driving motivation. Was the heaviest one that made it difficult for me to want to leave the religion, because I didn't want to accept the idea of non-consciousness. But then as I got older, I just accepted, that's if that is what death is, then it's not really that big of a deal. It's just
You just stop.
Literally. Yeah, it's literally just stopping. So it's not like a big deal.
It's like the quote that's probably falsely attributed to Mark Twain, because every quote is, but the quote that says, I didn't exist for millions of years before I was born, and it didn't bother me in the slightest. And I feel like that's going to be like after I die. And I think as I've gotten older, the more that I have experienced and done and traveled and stuff, the more I start to realize that as I get older, the thought of dying becomes less terrifying. And that, I think that's one, I would encourage you to, pack as much into this life as you can, do as much as you can, accomplish and see things, change the world, leave it better than when you started, travel, do fun things, meet awesome people, give back and just be a light to the world, if you will, just provide that positivity. Language. But I think that as you get older, once you're 80, 90, 100, I've talked to so many people who are old who say things like, yeah, I'm ready. I'm tired. I'm ready to go. Like whether they're atheists or not, like, yeah, some people, rage against the dying of the light at all ages. And there is some fear of like, well, what comes next? But I think you reach a point as you get older where your body just starts breaking down and you're just exhausted.
I'm kind of done.
And you're just, you ache all over and you're like, it'd be kind of peaceful to just like,
not
just close my eyes and fall asleep,
I think
I get it.
I think what kept me the longest was actually balancing up against things that I had already convinced. Like, I'm sure most churches, I definitely know my church and every church I've experienced, we would witness to ourselves and to each other. It wasn't just enough that we believed. We needed to consistently, show each other, oh, well, here are examples of God working miracles in my life every day. Every time you go to church, you recount how, you were just talking to your Aunt Susie and your Aunt Susie prayed to have, her arthritis go away and it's gone away, or whatever the case, is. I think one of the things that got me, that I remember, I felt like I needed to hit them one at a time. I couldn't just wipe them all out. I needed to go through so many different memories that I had falsely attributed and go, well, did I though? Did I experience a miracle? Because I was there. Well, maybe I did embellish a little bit. Well,
what if other people embellished too?
Yeah, but here's the thing: it didn't like wipe all of them out for me.
Yeah,
I needed to like go back over again and again. Oh my gosh, I have been perpetuating this. And it took me a while. I remember that was one of the things that kept me back.
You think in your mind, well, how could I possibly explain all of these incredible supernatural, experiences? But then, like, if you look at just one, you're like, well, yeah, that one's easy to explain. You look at another one on its own, yeah, that one's easy to explain. But in your mind, there's still this absolute mountain of supernatural evidence, and yet all of them are built on a house of cards, and they poke a little and.
Well, they don't all fall down.
They don't all fall down. There's
you check through.
You have one and it crumbles, and then you look at another and it crumbles, and you look at another and it crumbles. But then if you go back and you're like, but I have all this evidence, and you're thinking about all these that are crumbled, but in your mind they're all still solid. Yeah,
and there's guilt and shame and weirdness. I can only imagine. We didn't speak in tongues often at my church, but could you imagine speaking in tongues for 20 years and then being like, but why was I doing that then?
What if that was fake?
What if that was just me? Like, there is a hill that you got to climb over. That's funny for people on the other side or people who, but like, holy crap, that's a big deal. Anyway, Yosiah, thank you for calling in.
Oh, you're welcome, dog. You guys have a great day.
You too.
Take care.
Oh, that was fun. So I do want to remind people that the show is brought to you by you. It's your support that keeps us going. If you want to contribute, and actually, you know what? Before we even do that, it turns out I guess the clicking came back. Sometimes there's an audio clicking issue. And somebody helpfully in the live chat said, hey, you increase the buffer time between what you're sending to YouTube and it broadcasting, and that can help get rid of that. But here's the deal. I record a safety copy. And so what we put out is going to have the clicking entirely removed. The quality is fantastic. We put out an ad-free version just like that after the show. And it is available on Patreon. We also use that same clean audio for our podcast. If you want to get ad-free versions of the podcast and this, you can go to patreon.com/skepticgeneration. That's patreon.com/skepticgeneration. It helps keep us going. We're not supported by any other organizations. We're not part of a bigger thing. It's just us. This is literally the house that V and I live in, and Thomas is legitimately one of my best friends in the world. Thomas, I'm so glad that you joined me. Dude, this was a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate getting to come on.
Yeah, I do want to tell.
Am I the only guest who's been on twice on this show?
You are? Well, because of course I watch.
They had me back.
If you guys haven't checked out Holy Koolaid, check out the channel. It is fantastic. I love that I get to be a part of putting that together, learning animation and doing video editing and all that. It's just been fantastic. So, yeah. But I think that's about it. Is there anything else you want to plug before we go?
I mean, I just want to say, like, this, I've seen, you know, I'm just going to speak directly to your audience. Like, I've seen this, all of this skeptic generation thing. I've seen how much time and effort and energy Eric puts into it. Like, on Sundays, after the show, he doesn't just go and, like, take a break and grab a drink. Like, he sits and he clips every single episode and schedules them and makes thumbnails for them, and the amount of time and effort that he takes to, you know, handcraft and tailor all the tags, titles, description, plus managing, you know, all the other stuff like the you know, websites and the social media and the marketing stuff. Like, it's busy.
Actually, I don't. So I do.
You have
all
volunteers help?
No, I do the clipping and all of that. Yes, but V is also V
Well,
will
that's
step in
the-
the
yeah,
other
that- that's-
and do all
that's-
of the marketing and all of the.
That's what I
descriptions
mean.
and the tags.
What I'm saying is, like, it's a work of love, like, between the two of you guys. Like, I see how much work y'all put into it. I'm talking about you because you're visible on the camera, but, like, V does an
making me blush.
astronomical amount of work too, and it's a work of love. It's something that they care about, they're passionate about, they want to help people, they interact with fans and stuff, and it's a big deal. So if you guys do care about that and you do appreciate the work that they're doing and the community that they've built and are building, then Patreon is the best way to give back.
Usually at this part of the show, we read our super chats. There was a hiccup, and there's only one super chat showing, and I know that there were other super chats, and I'm very upset about this. I don't know how to get it fixed. Viper Zhang sent $2 and says, "New life goal: be famous enough to swipe French fries." Yes, absolutely, Viper Zhang. Thank you, and thank you to everyone else who sent a super chat. I don't know why it's not showing up, and just so y'all know, we are using all of the funds that come in from super chats to go towards our two big goals this year. To get an editing rig that can withstand some of the goals that we have planned. You know what they are, they don't know. But we've got some big stuff that we want to do, and it's going to need that. And then also to get a live producer. So thank you. Thank you for your support. And until next time, we're glad. Do you remember?
Yeah.
We're glad we had this.
We had this.
Okay, let's try it again.
All right.
Until next time, we're glad we had this talk.